Hey, you guys find it weird how the players aren't told before red light, green light that elimination means death? You'd think some of the players would have been a bit more psychologically prepared if they had truly known the stakes of the game. And that game killed over half the contestants, so yet another example of the games not being quite as fair and equal as the front man would lead you to believe. Then again, you could argue that scene serves as a sort of metaphor for how the upper class uses loopholes and verbal technicalities to ultimately exploit the lower class for their own personal entertainment. No, wait, no, it's just an observation. Wait, what? What's good with y'all? It's your boy Poppy Evil back again with another video, and this is going to be my review on Squid Game, a South Korean survival drama smash hit that captivated the world for like a 2-month period, led to some great Halloween costumes created by Hwang Dong-hyuk, and I'd say it pretty much lives up to the hype. Now, lucky for me, I kind of got into the show late, but I didn't get it spoiled a lot. I saw pictures of like the old guy running around with the jacket, and I saw Ali holding on to Ji-young. I saw that meme a lot. And then the one thing that did get spoiled was I saw a picture of Ali that said, "This guy deserves better." So then I was like, okay, well, this guy's going to die tragically in the show. But other than that, I didn't get anything spoiled. Went into it pretty much completely blind. I saw pictures of the doll as well, like memes of the doll, like looking for stuff. I had no idea what any of it meant. And so, yeah, I just went into the show, and boy, was I not let down. So basically, recap of the show. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, but there's no promises because this is a pretty beefy show. But the main character is Ji-young. He's a guy that lives with his mom, unemployed, I'm pretty sure. They're pretty broke. He's got a daughter, and he goes out and he tries to win some money on horse races so he can get some money to buy something for his daughter's birthday. And he uses his daughter's birthday as like the winning lottery numbers or the number of the horse. He used that, and it ended up winning. It ended up working out for him. He won the money. He's out here flexing. He's calling his ex-wife, talking about, oh, I'm going to get her something special. Then some random guys, some loan sharks, they come in and chase him. Ji-young's running, with the lottery money. And he bumps into this random girl who we find out ends up stealing the money from him. And she ends up being an important character later. The loan sharks catch him in the bathroom, say, you owe us a bunch of money. Hey, sign your name in blood that if you don't give us this money by this time, we're coming to kill you. And so he signs that off. He realizes the money's been taken away from the girl, and so he goes on. He gets a present for his daughter, which he doesn't open the box for some reason. It ends up being a toy gun. His daughter's moving away. He's down bad. He punches the stepdad in the face when he meets him. It's a down bad family situation. It's a whole bunch of stuff, but yeah. So he goes into a train. He runs into this random guy, and they play like this card game. I forgot what it's called, where you have to smack the cards onto the ground, and if you flip it, you get money, and if you lose, he gets slapped. So Ji-young gets slapped by the guy over and over and over again. And when Ji-young finally wins the game, he finally turns the card over. He goes to slap the guy. Guy catches his hand. Subject of a lot of memes that was. And then he gets given the money. And he gets told, if you want to win more money, call this number. So he ponders it for a little bit. He ponders it. Then all of a sudden, his mom gets sick. And then he's like, all right, yeah, I'm joining this game. Calls it, goes to the address. They go to this elaborate place. He meets this old dude, befriends the old dude. He meets his childhood friend, Sang-woo, who went to business U and SNU. And if you feel like that detail was not that important to the character, then obviously Ji-young didn't think so, because Ji-young mentions that the guy went to business school at SNU about 13 times an episode. So definitely be prepared for that. They go into this first game. It's red light, green light. So it's essentially, the players are kind of shocked because they're thinking this is some sort of elaborate game for, a bunch of adults. And they're out here playing kid games, red light, green light. So then the game starts, and all of a sudden, a player dies. And a whole bunch of players die. People get picked off over and over again, because if you move, they detect the movement, and you're gone. So, crazy, wild game. Over half the players get eliminated. Players coming up in the game, they're absolutely shook. They're shocked. They did not know that being eliminated meant death, which, as I talked about, was kind of BS, but we won't get into that right now. Later on, there's a whole bunch of games in the show. There's a cookie. There's a sugar cookie cutting thing where you gotta cut out a shape perfectly. There's tug of war, which was an excellently tense scene where the old guy, despite the team having an old guy and a few women and going up against a team of men, the old guy, figures out the tactic to be able to win the tug of war. That's a great scene. You've got the Marvel scene. My goodness gracious, the Marvel scene, which is just so well acted, so dramatic, so tense, and just so heartbreaking at the end. Probably the best episode in the show. Then you've got, I'm not sure what it's called, but I'll just call it the glass towel game, where you've got a bunch of panels of glass. Some glass is going to be, strong glass that can hold a human. Another glass can't hold a human at all. And then there's the Squid Game, with the actual show the game's named after. I'm still not sure how the game really works. You hop around on the thing. It kind of looks like hopscotch, but it's not. You got to hop around on one foot at certain points, and then you got to stand in the circle, and that's a whole thing. So there's other games that are involved in the show as well. While Ji-young's at the game, you meet a lot of different new characters. You meet Sung-woo, obviously his childhood friend you were mentioned before. We meet Sae-byuk, who's a North Korean defector who's trying to bring her family together in South Korea safely. Her brother's going there, living out of school. We meet Min-yeon, who's a girl who's at the game, who's pretty insufferable character, but you can see she's got a bit of intelligence to her, got a bit of wit, kind of smart, plays the game pretty well up until the end, until she sacrifices herself and Juksu, who's like the bully of the team for the rest of it. Ali, who we know saves Ji-young in Red Light, Green Light, he ends up being a main character, and the old man. I think one of the reasons that this show resonated so much with such a large audience was because the characters were so real and they had real problems. The things that these characters are going through, any one of us could really relate to. Ji-young, who's poor, broke, down on his luck, living with his mom, money kind of tight. Has a daughter, willing to do anything to provide for his daughter, but is finding it really hard to do so. His priorities are just kind of out of whack because he has so many things to worry about. Sae-byuk, while her story is kind of wild, being a North Korean defector, a lot of people can really relate to trying to do anything to keep their family together, and fleeing from an oppressive, tyrannical government. Ali is in a similar situation, also an immigrant from another country, not getting paid, not getting paid by his boss. Feeling really desperate, he needs to pay the bill somehow, but he's just not getting money. You see why he wants to join the Squid Games. You see Sung-woo, who obviously, as you know from, him, everybody, knowing that he went to business school at SNU, he was obviously known as the smart guy, in his family. His mom and Ji-young are so proud of him. He has so much potential going to business school, having all this acumen. But he goes on later in life, makes wrong decisions, gets into a whole bunch of debt, and now he's desperate and lost and doesn't know what to do. He's fixing to drown himself in the bathtub, which is like the slowest, most painful way to die. But he would even choose that rather than having to face and pay for all the financial mistakes that he's made. All these characters have such engaging, rich backstories that so many of us can, if not relate to, then at least connect to or empathize with them. And that's just what made the characters so fun to watch. And credit to all the actors for bringing all those characters and those stories to life. Some of the shocking parts, I would say, yeah, maybe they're predictable because, obviously with plot armor, like during the tug of war with all the principal characters on one team, you know that team's going to win. We're not going to kill off all the main characters. But even still, that scene was so tense and engaging. And right at the end of, I think, the third, fourth episode, where it cuts on that cliffhanger, where Ji-young's leg is hanging off the side, you're still on the edge of your seat. We're thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Even though you kind of know what's going to happen, but the direction and the acting makes it so tense to where it's still so fun to watch. And during the red light, green light scene, when I got to figure that, 456 players are going to have to cut down this cast a little bit. That's a lot of characters to, sort of deal with. So I figured a lot of people would die. But even then, 255 people, the way it's shot, the way it's editing, like when the second guy gets shot and then the blood spatters onto that lady and there's that quick zoom in and it zooms into on her face doing this. And all of a sudden chaos just ensues. That's such a well-directed, well-acted scene. And it just made that scene so engaging and wonderful to watch. So ultimately in the end, Ji-young, after winning, goes home. He gets the car with the 45 billion won and he doesn't use it for a year. And then he gets the same card. He finds the old guy. The old guy is still alive. He ends up being the leader. I wasn't really sure how I felt about this twist when I first saw it. I mean, I was kind of surprised. It was shocking, considering that they didn't actually, there's that old rule in TV. Like, if you don't see a character die on screen, that character isn't alive. Well, I decided not to follow that because technically Ali's death wasn't shown on screen either. You know, we just see the Sangwoo reaction shot, which hurts just as hard, if not harder, than actually seeing Ali die. Right? We see Ji Young actually die, but we don't see Ali's body actually fall. So I didn't want to believe in that. But yeah, for him to survive and then him ended up being like the leader, it's like, oh, that's why he was number one. That's why he voted no, so that the people that were in the game were the people that absolutely wanted to come back and join the game. And I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I felt about it. It was a good twist. It was well executed. It was just a guy that, you know, really wanted to desperately have some fun. But you got to wonder, doesn't this break the whole thing? Like, oh, everybody's fair, everybody's equal? Because obviously the old guy is not really going to die. He's not in danger of dying or anything. He probably knew ahead of time what all the games were. If he's the owner of the freaking game, he knew what all the games were. Yet the one guy got punished for getting that information from the red people. You see what I mean about the rich, bro? Like, the illusion of equality. Like I said, it's an illusion. It's not real. They keep telling you that things are real, that things are equal, when they're not. This old guy knew by every game the whole time, was never in danger of dying. As soon as he wants everybody to be safe and get the game to call off, he announces, and then the game just ends. So how equal is that? He clearly gets top billing. It's ridiculous, man. But yeah, after the old guy dies, Ji Young, he finally does right by his people. He finds Se-byuk's little brother. He connects him with Sangwoo's mom. Doesn't tell Sangwoo's mom about Sangwoo, obviously, but gives them a bunch of money, so they'll be all right. He gets a horrendous red haircut, just disgraceful. And he's on the plane. He's on the way to go see his daughter, gets a call, and then just turns around like some type of goon and just try to stop the game, which obviously leaves the possibility open for a season 2. First thing, for once, go see your freaking daughter, man. Second, I mean, with the whole season 2 thing, I feel like if the show just ended off that cliffhanger and with us just wondering and being able to speculate, is Ji Young going to take the game down? What's he going to do? What's he going to become? You know, just that intrigue, that mystery, and leaving it right there. But you know, with this show becoming so massive, the biggest show in Netflix history, they're obviously going to cash in and make a season 2. And granted, I haven't lost hope on season 2. Season 2 could be great. They've got a myriad of options. They could go back and follow, Ji Young trying to infiltrate the game and be the guy. They could go back and bring a completely new cast of characters. Go back and just, archive a completely different game, like the first game, like a game from like 2003 or something, and follow all those characters. They could do a whole bunch of different things. They could do, the prequels. They could do they could do something about the front man, like what he could do. There's a lot of different options they could do for a season 2. I just don't really think it's fully necessary. If this show, with these 9 episodes, if you told me we'd never get a season 2 and this would be the end of it, I'd be pretty satisfied. With the interesting of, oh, what's Ji Young going to do? What's he going to turn around? Is he going to stop the games? I don't really need to know the answer to that question. What I got is fine. But obviously, as season 2 is coming, there's a lot of things they can do. I trust the writers. I trust the directors. If they bring everybody back, they obviously can't bring back the characters who died. But if they bring most of the people back that they can, the show will be pretty good. But I'm not quite sure if it'll hit the same as that first season did. Obviously, a big theme of the show was really the class commentary, the critique on capitalism as a whole, to where so many people were just so deep in debt, so many people owed money that they were able to resort themselves to this sadistic, wild twist on children's game and turning them into, high stake death matches, to where people were willing to participate in that because, they had just become such victims of capitalism. That obviously says a lot. And I think it also says a lot to this illusion of quality, illusion of fairness. Like I got into earlier about how the players aren't told about how elimination means death. So they're not fully aware of the stakes of what they're in, yet they're joining it. And then that ends up costing more than half of the players' lives, which doesn't really seem fair. And of course, the front man comes on and he's talking about like, oh, this game is fair. We want everybody to have an equal chance to be treated equally, treated fairly. And then in situations where the players are given our inherent advantages and let them inherent skills give them advantage in the game, all of a sudden the front man takes away that advantage. Like during the glass game, the glassmaker, right, uses his experience as a glassmaker to know which glass is the faulty glass and which glass is the one that will be able to hold them. As soon as he figures out that advantage that he earned, it wasn't just given to him when he was born. He earned that advantage. He was born with it. He worked for it. He earned it. He used it to his and his other players' advantage. All of a sudden, that's taken away from him. What's fair about that? So what's the point of all his experiences as a glassmaker if he can't utilize it in order to save his own life? It's the illusion of equality. We'll make it seem like, oh, things are equal, things are fair, people all have a fair chance. But if you know, suddenly, if you have too fair of a chance, if you're too equal, if you outsmart us too much, so where we can't be entertained, oh, then it's a problem. You see what I'm saying? Like, the show really looks at us and challenges us. We look at these characters doing these despicable things, but you got to wonder, would you not do the same thing in that position? We look at Sung-woo, obviously tricking Ali, a character we all love. It was heartbreaking. It was tough to watch. But if you were in Sung-woo's position, right, you keep getting your butt kicked in this marble thing. You got one marble left. What else? What else can you do? He has no other options. He can't beat Ali fair and square. He's got to play dirty. This is his own life, his own survival he's talking about. Who else in that position wouldn't do what he did? You've got to do what you got to do. Obviously, it's easy for us, watching from the outside, not being in that game, to judge Sung-woo for what he did, to judge everybody, to judge the glass guy. Because not a lot of people talking about this. Right? The glassmaker, he knew from jump. He didn't just figure out in the middle of the game. He knew from jump which tiles were which. But he let all, 12, 11 people in front of him die when he could have saved all of them. But he just decided not to say anything because that was the best thing for him to do. If you got this knowledge, you got this information, keep it close to the chest until you absolutely need to use it. And that ended up, killing a lot of players off. But it's a thing that he had to do in that situation, As much as we judge these characters for doing these despicable things, for lying and deceiving others and tricking others, would we not do the same if we were in that position? And I really think the show does a good job of asking those questions. At least for me, it made me look towards myself like, why am I judging these players for doing these things where if I was in as desperate of a situation as they were, if I'm billions of dollars in debt and I've got to win this game to be able to save myself and get rid of all this debt, what would I not do? I think Ji-young ended up being the winner in the end because he was the perfect type of player they need to win this game. He had just enough compassion and faith and heart and belief in others to get him through, yet he was also cold and calculating when he needed to be and was able to exploit others for his own personal gain, like when he tricked the old man for the Marvels game. And when you look at the show also showed the two extremes of that, right? You got Sung-woo, who was too cold, too calculating, and he ended up going a step too far. Him killing Sae-byuk probably ended up costing him winning the games. You could argue that everything else he did right, tricking Ali was the right thing to do, pushing the glassmaker and the glass thing was the right thing to do, not telling Ji-young about the cutting shape thing was probably the right thing to do. But killing Sae-byuk was obviously a step too far because now his own friend from school is determined to not let him win. And that ends up costing him. Ji-young obviously outsmarts him and ends up defeating him in the end. And then you look at the other side of the spectrum. You look at Ali, who was too caring, too trusting, too much believing of others. He ends up befriending Sung-woo and, trusting him implicitly. So where he doesn't even fathom that Sung-woo would try to save his own skin and, trick him into winning the marbles and ultimately ending up getting him killed. So you see the two extremes, the two sides of it, and that ended up costing them in the end. Meanwhile, the guy that was perfectly in the middle had just enough of this and just enough of that to stay completely level. He ends up winning the game. Where the show truly stands out, what separates the show from other ones, is the episode where the characters go back home after deciding to be voted off, right? So the characters, after the red light, green light game, when all those people get slaughtered, the characters vote, majority vote, 101 to 100, to leave the game, to go home because they can't, don't want to risk their lives. This is sick, this is twisted, this is nuts. They go home. And that episode where you see everybody from home, you see everybody's perspective, it holds the entire plot together. If that sequence doesn't work, if you don't truly buy why these characters want to go back into this game, because obviously after the first game, you're like, bro, everybody get out of there. Who in your right minds want to vote? Who want to stay into this? Who want to be into this? Why would anybody want to do that? The characters are thinking that, and you as the audience are thinking that. But when you go back home and you see Sae-byuk in that conversation with her brother begging and pleading, where are our parents? You said that you would bring our parents together, and seeing how much that affects Sae-byuk. And you see that emotional conversation. And Sae-byuk going to the lawyer guy who's trying to just take her money and saying that, your mom probably not have survived. Seeing that scene, how strong it was. Seeing Sung-woo's mom talk so highly of him at the shop. Meanwhile, her son is out here down horrendous, literally drowning in debt. He's drowning himself in the bathtub because he's in so much debt. The police are looking for him at his yard. His mom thinks his mom thinks that he's in America. Meanwhile, he's 2 blocks away in an apartment, down horrendous. You see Ali trying to go get money from his boss, and you see like how messed up his hand is. He was working and his hand got messed up, but he's not getting paid. You see Ji Young, his mom gets like some foot thing and she's in the hospital and he can't pay for it. The way the show showed the plight of all these characters, it makes you and the characters believe we got to go back in that game. And that holds this whole show together, because if you just if you make the characters vote out and leave, and there's no real reason for them to come back, the whole show falls apart. Because it's like, what are they even doing here? Why would you risk your life to come in this sick thing? But when you show the plight of all that characters, what it would truly mean to all of these characters if they got all that money, it puts the show on an entirely different level. And you can see why the show was so beloved and watched and admired by so many people. Overall, this show is fantastic. This show deserves all the recognition, the awards that it's getting, all the attention that the actors are getting, all the millions of followers that they're getting. Shout out to the director, the writer, the actors, everybody. This show is fantastic. It's well worth the hype. It's well worth being Netflix's most watched show of all time. If you somehow haven't watched it yet, definitely give it a watch. It's still on Netflix. It's fantastic. That's going to be the video for today. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll catch y'all on the flip. Peace.